Hello everyone. This video is the second video in a series of 2 videos to discuss grading rubrics in Canvas. The first video shows you how to actually use the grading rubric and what it looks like. So I would suggest that you would watch that first video before you watch this one, if you haven't done that already, because it'll give you a mind's eye picture of what we're trying to do here and why you might want to invest the time to do that. So my first suggestion before we start to create grading rubrics in Canvas is that you would draft the rubric first on a piece of paper. Now, you may already have rubrics for your face-to-face classes. If that's the case, simply find the rubric that you want to create here on Canvas and use that as your guideline. But it's possible to just start from scratch and create the rubric, but I think it's easier if you have at least something drafted out to give you an idea of how you want to set the rubric up before you get started. And the second thing that I would say is be prepared to practice patience. As is the case with any new thing that we're learning, it sometimes takes a bit of frustration and a lot of patience in order to get the job done. So once you have got rubrics created, Canvas saves them and you can move them from one class to another. But getting those rubrics created to begin with is a bit of a process, and it does take a little bit of time, particularly if you're creating rubrics with any kind of complexity to them. So first of all, let's take a look at where you go to actually find the spot to create the rubric. So the 2 places where you would probably be most likely to need to use rubrics would be in assignment uploads and in discussion forums. So if we look at an assignment upload here, so we've clicked on the assignment and gotten to where we could edit it and that sort of thing, you'll see that we have the prompt right here to add a rubric. So this is clear and easy to see. Now, discussion forums are a little bit different. So if we go here to the discussion forum, we'll see first of all that we don't have anywhere down here to add a rubric. Now, we know when we see these 3 dots, it means that there is a menu. So if we click on this, which we might suspect that this is where we would find the rubric, we click this, and again, we do have some options, but rubric is not one. Now, I will tell you that it took me a while to figure this out, a fair amount of YouTube research. So if we go here, we'll see what we have created for this assignment. So I've said allow threaded replies and users must post before seeing replies, but I haven't clicked graded yet. Now typically discussion forums would be graded. You might use one just for some feedback or poll, but typically they'd be graded. So let's say that this is going to be graded, and let's say it's going to be worth 100 points. And then we will save this again and see what happens. Now, when we come up here and click this, we'll see that we have some more options, and we have a add a rubric option now. So in order to create a grading rubric in a discussion forum, you have to have set the discussion forum up first to indicate that it is a graded forum. And probably that makes sense once you think about it, but you have to have indicated that before you can create the rubric. So now let's go back over here and let's go to this again, and let's say add a rubric. Now this is the baseline bare bones of the rubric to begin with. So you have a description of the criterion that you want to use, the first criterion, and you have 2 rating scales. Now, if you have watched the first video, you'll see that I had 3 rating scales. You can have more than 3 if you want to. You'll see here that it says find a rubric. If I were to click on this, I would see all of the rubrics that I created for my spring class. I'm not going to do that, but if you click on find a rubric and you haven't added any rubrics, you're not going to find any. That probably makes sense. But once you have created them, they'll always be there and you'll always be able to pull them into a different class. So let's look here first of all. I'll write freeform comments when assessing students. That means we don't want any rating scales here at all. If I click this will simply just, I can say how many points it's worth and I can describe what I want them to do, but all I'm going to do here is just write comments. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to remove the points. I'm not going to post outcomes because I don't use outcomes in the grade book. But I am going to say use this rubric for assignment grading. That's the first thing that I'm going to say. Now I'm going to set up this first column the way I want it to be. If I want a range, I'm going to have to say that. Before I do anything, I'm going to click on this little pencil icon, which means edit. And you'll see there's one for each area. It would be kind of nice if I clicked on this and it opened up all of the areas, but that's not going to happen. So I'm going to say edit the criterion. So let's say that this first criterion is for the introduction of the essay. Let's assume this is an essay. And let's say here I want to have a hook, I want to have a thesis, to have an overview of topics. And I'll say update the criterion. Now you'll see here that this has 5 points and then 0 points. And it says full marks and no marks. We can change all of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is say I want a range. And again, in the first video that I made, you'll see that I have a grade range all the time. And then I'm going to say I want 3 here, and I know this is going to open up a middle one. So I'm going to call that middle one good. All right, and I'm going to edit this one. And let's say we're going to make this first criterion worth, let's say, 12. And let's call this excellent. And let's say no components missing. Again, you'll have this all figured out what you want to write. I'm just making this up as I go along to show you why it's not a good idea to make it up as I go along. Then I'll click on this one. We'll say 12 to perhaps 10, maybe 9, maybe 8. Now you'll see what happened here, and this is something that I don't love, but I haven't been able to figure out a way to change it. So you see how this is 12 and then this is 12. I wish this would start with 11, but it doesn't seem to want to do that. So this is what we've got. And again, this shows that we have 15 points for this criterion. Then we'll come here and we'll say we'll add another criterion. We could say we want to duplicate the one we already have, which you might want to do, and then just edit it. That might be the easiest way to do it, is to just duplicate this one and say we're going to call this the body of the essay. And we're going to say 3 paragraphs and whatever else we want to say here. Update that criterion. Then we can come in here and we can change this. Maybe this one's going to be worth 30 points. So 30 to 27. And we'll put whatever we want in here. I'm not going to change that. And 27 to perhaps 18 or maybe 16. And put the rating in. Update. And we'll see this one's worth 30. We got 45 points already, so this assignment's worth 100. So we will just continue to add criterion, and you can do a new criterion, but if you do a new one, it's going to start with no range, with only 2 here. So once you have set this up, it makes the most sense to duplicate the first one. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you duplicate because they're all going to be the same. So duplicate it, and then we'll say conclusion here. And then we can go in and edit each of these. It's much easier than trying to set it up new every single time. So once you have got all of your criteria in and your total points equal the point value of your assignment, which I haven't done yet, but I'm going to pretend that we have, then you're going to say create the rubric, and and you'll see that here is the rubric. And again, this is worth 100, so I would want to make sure that this equaled 100. So once you have figured out how to do this, if you continue to just duplicate your criterion every time and just change the text in it, that makes it, I think, a lot easier than it does if you try to create these rows every single time. Now, as I said in the first video, you don't have to do a range. You can add as many of these rating columns as you want to. You can add 4, whatever you've got on your original rubric that you have drafted or that you're currently using. You can put it in here and set this up, create the rubric. Once you've created it, you can pull it into another assignment, and if you want to edit, so you can put a title here, and this lets you get in and continue to work on your rubric. And once you've done that, you'll just say update. The reason that's asking me if I want to change the points or leave them different is because this doesn't match my score for this assignment. So I've said the assignment is worth a different score than this. So when you have created yours, your total points should equal the value of your assignment, obviously. So that's the way that you do a rubric. It is a bit time consuming, particularly if you have a lot of information in these boxes, which you may have, depending on the complexity of what it is that you are grading. And if you have watched the first video, when you watch the first video, you'll see once you get this created, it's very easy to read it, to use it, to grade, and to give the students good solid feedback. So hopefully this was helpful for you.